back again 4 more days to like a rest and recreation area where you're back off even the reservist line. Time to recharge those batteries, and then you go back to the front line and start the process again. And it varied by battalion, but that was a general theme of the rotations that were done. If you look at our administrative team, they've been on the front lines since really March of the prior year. You know, we're going on 15, 16 months nonstop. And there's opinions all over the place. Everybody's got an opinion about whatever's going on, and we get to hear them all. So it's been a long year, but there's light at the end of the tunnel, guys. It's not a train coming to hit us, and you need to take some time for some self-care this summer, because it's been a long year and a half. So I just want to take time to say thank you.
At this time, we'll move on to the public comments. Is there anyone who wishes to address the board this evening? If so, please raise your hand. Thank you, Mr. Adrian. Dr. Adrian, sorry. Okay. I know how important
So I have three commendations I want to recognize. First up, I want to recognize Katie Caslett, our athletic director. So if you're familiar with the athletic seasons, we have the same number of events, but now we have a much smaller window to put them in. And Mother Nature has cursed us with a very rainy and wet spring. So she's been on call 24/7 for the last 5 months, and she's going to continue to be on call for at least the next month. So exceptional work by Katie. I certainly appreciate all the efforts because it is a unique time, and she's never complained or bellyached about it at all, but just jumped in to do the best she can for the students and coaches. Next up, I've got Megan, Bagby, Matt Andrews, and Stephanie Pitzer. As a high school principal, as a principal in the district, I think we would all appreciate, not to mention the work they did on the Return to Learn plan, which was exceptional, but those of you who may not know is the PLC planning that goes on every week in our buildings. As a principal, I've always had to worry about that on Tuesday. What are we doing for PLCs? That business has not only continued, it has improved because we get a plan every Tuesday that goes out to the district specific with what each building is going to be doing. So something that probably goes unnoticed, but is certainly recognized. So Matt, Megan, and Stephanie appreciate that. Along with the professional development. If you're not familiar with our professional development, this crew has saved the district thousands of dollars in doing professional development throughout the year and over the summer that we build in-house. And the package that they've put together is so clean and professional that anybody could pick that up and market it and sell it within their district. So what they've done there has been sensational, so appreciate the work there. Lastly, I want to give a shout out to David Johnson because a few weeks ago we learned that Dunlap High School is receiving $30,000 from a grant that he pursued for CTE. And it was one of those grants that kind of came about that no one really knew a whole lot about. ISB kind of released it at the end of February. Chris Kendall, our perfect coordinator, kind of said, hey, are there any districts out there? And at that time, we were up to our gills with work. And David's also pursuing his dissertation, so he was doing that. And he's like, just give it to me. Let me see if I can get some money. So we got $11,000 for iPads and drawing software for the new iPads. And then we got $21,000 for landscaping to be done at Dunlap High School in conjunction with professionals and mostly with students. So hats off to those three. Some things that have been pretty significant that may have gone unnoticed.
Anyone else who wishes to address the board? Hearing none, this concludes the public participation portion of the meeting. The board will now move on to the information discussion items. School activity account reports are included in the board packet. Are there any questions? Next, Mr. Etnauer and Mrs. Reitner will present information on updates to the Outdoor Learning Center at Hickory Grove Elementary School.
All right, good evening, everyone. We're very excited to be here tonight to provide you with an update on the Outdoor Learning Center that we're going to be doing at Hickory Grove. We have a short presentation, and then there'll be an opportunity if you have any questions at the end that we can answer for you.
Over the last year, we have created a planning committee comprised of teachers at every grade level, including art and music, as well as parents and an architect.
All right, Mrs. Rickner came along today to keep us in line and to make sure that we didn't take up too much time, but she's going too fast for me. All right, we'll get that right now.
Melissa, go back.
I got it, Melissa. Got it now. Sorry about that. On our planning committee, I'd like to recognize those teachers that are here with us tonight. So we have Hickory, who is our early childhood coordinator, Laura Buckley, music, Connor Peacock, second grade, and then I'd especially like to thank our two parents that are with us tonight. I have Roxanne Olmstead, who is the chair of the Outdoor Learning Center Committee on the PTO, and Jana Sobiar, who is our PTO president. Everything that you see today would not be possible without the PTO's support. And when we asked them to join the committee, I don't think they knew what they were signing up for, but we appreciate your support and your passion for the project. Oh, and I have one more. I missed you were sitting down. Bruce Brown, who's with Farnsworth Group, was the architect for the project, and so we thank Bruce. Our original Outdoor Learning Center was a very small area, and as we visited places, and you'll see through the presentation, the project grew in scope, and it grew in creativity, and we thank Bruce for all of his work and extra time that he put in to come up with the plan that you see before us.
Those who weren't able to be here this evening, Laura Dorsey, our kindergarten teacher, Johanna Davis, first grade, Leslie B., third, Lisa Schock, fourth, Cheryl Wooden, fifth, and our art teacher, Erica Barber.
All right, so I know it's exciting when you see the site plans and you see what's possible, but I want to draw your attention to this slide in the presentation. I think it is the most important thing that we're going to share with you tonight. It answers the why. Why do we want to do an outdoor learning center at Hickory Grove? When you think of an outdoor learning center, it's much more than just learning outdoors. It gives students an opportunity to learn in ways that are not possible in a traditional classroom.
Our first step as a committee was we did a book study on Last Child in the Woods, Saving Our Children from Nature Deficit Disorder. While it was a challenging book to read, the research is clear. Nature is essential for a child's physical, emotional, and intellectual development. It helps enhance creativity, self-discipline, and problem-solving skills.
So after doing the book study and really understanding the importance of having an outdoor learning experience at Hickory Grove, we went to visit two outdoor learning centers in the area. The first was UPC Preschool, where we met Pam Scranton, and she was just such a valuable resource, so friendly, sharing all of the ideas that she had as they developed the outdoor learning center there, and also I believe it was at Northminster before that. And then our second visit was at Wilder Waite. Wilder Waite has an amazing outdoor learning center, and being able to spend time with Stacy was so valuable in our planning process. It cut a lot of time off of what we needed to do by being able to learn from you and take ideas that you have. So thank you to Stacy. Now, on the site plan, you do have a copy that's in front of you. What I'd like to do is just kind of orient you to where is this at Hickory Grove. If you look to the right of your plan, that is the front of the school. You can see the front parking lot. And the Outdoor Learning Center will start around the south end of the building at the bottom. It will be between the building and the neighborhood that's on Sesame Street. And then it will wrap around and it will connect to where our current blacktop and playground area is. And so as you can see, it's quite a large project. Mrs. Rickner is going to talk on the next slides about how we're going to do this in phases to make it more manageable.
For our first phase that we're going to begin this summer, it's going to include the entry feature, the performance stage, and the gardening areas.
All right, so what I'm going to try to do up here is to show you on the map where that is. And so it might be easier if I do use this just so you can see it instead of blocking it. But we're really excited to be able to use what we have and build from that. So this would be the front parking lot, and we will create a sidewalk that will come off the front parking lot. We'll have an entryway or like an arbor above that with signage, letting people know that you're entering an outdoor learning space. It almost is really like a park space that has an educational purpose. And our first big project is going to be able to create a performance area. So we're going to create a stage, it'll be covered. Right now, we're kind of figuring out, those next steps with the price of lumber and what we may do. We have some alternative plans of what we can construct it out of if we need to. It's built on a hillside. Everything kind of slopes off from Allen Road. And so it's going to create like a little mini amphitheater at Hickory Grove. You'll see that there are bushes that we're going to plant around it to protect it and make it private, to make it so it's not something that's bothering the neighbors that are along that side. You'll have the stage, and then the seating will be arced around it. We're hoping to be able to use something that has a very heavy-duty, like stone seating that doesn't require a lot of maintenance. Now, the other part of phase one that we're going to do is inside the sidewalk, the existing sidewalk, this is going to become right here a Pollinator Garden. Leslie B. wrote a grant. She's a third grade teacher to create a Pollinator Garden and a gardening club at Hickory Grove. We had hoped to start that this year, but with COVID, we weren't able to do that. And then this will be happening, and it is happening right now. This will be a reading area. There'll be lots of a variety of trees. We're going to do some things with hummingbirds and hummingbird feeders in that area. And then we're going to actually have raised vegetable gardens and fruit trees in this area. And so we're really excited to kick off phase one. This summer we actually have had Julie out to do the markings on the ground, and we're purchasing the trees and getting ready to get started.
For our second phase, it'll include the art outdoor classroom, the climbing area, and the messy materials.
Now I think the best way to visualize where the second phase is, so this was the first phase here. The second phase is going to be a loop around and then back. It's going to include the art classroom. It's going to include a messy materials area. And you're probably saying, what's messy materials? Messy materials, it's kids being able to interact with natural materials. You might have a log pile that kids are climbing on. There'll be rocks that we're going to have along the creek that's there. I like to think of it, right now we tell kids stay out of the creek. And with an outdoor learning center, we're going to be encouraging kids to be a part of nature and to get into nature.
Hopefully they don't get too wet.
All right.
For phase 3 and 4, these phases can either be done separately or together. We're seeing this as in about 2 or 3 years from now. It'll include the music and movement, the science deck, the council ring, and then a large open area.
Now, we've created a lot of passion with the students and the parents, and so the timeline is very flexible, and there are a lot of costs, and we'll talk about funding at the end that are associated with it. So a lot of the timeline is is flexible, but there is a lot of passion and commitment. We've raised a lot of funds, and we've had a lot of donations, and so it could either speed up or slow down based off of the funding. But this is probably the most exciting piece that will come. It's a large piece, and we put it at the end because it allows us that time to do the fundraising. I'll point out some of the features that were within there. This is my absolute, it's probably the simplest feature, but it's my favorite feature on the entire drawing. This is a council ring. And so I want you to think about a classroom. Many times in a classroom you'll have a teacher that's teaching and kids that are in an audience. The council ring is seats going around, and there'll be bushes around it to protect it for privacy, but everybody's facing in, and you're trying to, you're having a discussion. Instead of being talked to, you're talking with and amongst one another. We have a science deck that will be overlooking the waterway. This will be a classroom that will have tables and seats on it. It's just like an outdoor classroom where they can do science or anything that they'd like to do. A music area, there'll be 3 different stations with outdoor musical instruments. And then this is the big part. It's a big open further to change the elevation and create some mounds where we can plant tall native grasses that would be probably waist high with trees growing on those. We would hope to put in some maybe rocks that kids can sit on throughout there. We even had a discussion of maybe adding some frisbee golf or something like that for the kids to do. It really becomes exciting because this is the learning space where teachers are going to be taking kids out and doing things. This almost becomes an extension of the playground, a natural playground.
We're at about 11 minutes here, so I have a real quick question for you. Could you point to where the existing playground area is? I'm very familiar because we've been on the campus, but is it further past?
Okay, so on this original drawing, when they built Hickory Grove, the playground was supposed to stop here and the blacktop wasn't big enough.
Right.
And so we use this as an overlay, but the playground, the blacktop comes to here, and then the playground is over in this area. So
Okay.
it will connect right into where that blacktop and playground area are.
Thank you. Looks like a lovely plan.
Our groundbreaking ceremony is this Tuesday, or May 25th, at 1:30. We would be honored if you would join us. Just remember to wear your green t-shirt that is there in front of you. As Mr. Rettenmeyer said, funding has been a team effort combined of PTO, grants, and other donations, and that will be our method moving forward as well.
We know that this is going to be a large project. It is going to take a lot of resources and time, effort, and energy. Everyone knows that does construction that construction is muddy, it's messy, and oftentimes it's complicated. But we're excited to kick this off this spring. We're not going to let that stop us because we really believe in our vision of what's possible. So we wanted to come tonight to the board to give you an update because if you're hearing about it in the public, we wanted you to have an awareness of what we're working on. Are there any questions that we can answer about that?
You just said the 5th, or May 25th at 1:30.
Correct.
That's correct. And it's going to be our first time we're going to be follow COVID protocols of spacing with the kids, but it's going to be our first time bringing the entire school together outside. We're going to have them in lines. We've got a ribbon cutting. We've got scissors. We're going to be planting fruit trees. So it could be interesting, but I think it'll help build that excitement with the kids about actually seeing something happening.
Thank you very much. It's very nice.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have any further questions? All right. Next, Terra Engineering Group will present information on the traffic study that was completed for Dunlap High School and Dunlap Middle School. Is it Greg?
So I'll let you gentlemen introduce yourselves to the board, please.
Hello, everyone.
Hello?
My name is Colin Code. I'm with Terra Engineering. I'm here with my colleague Eric Thurkeldson. The past couple months we've been working on a traffic study for Dunlap High School and Middle School, the whole campus. So I'll get started. If anything's unclear, I'm a pointer, but I don't have a pointer. So I'll do my best to paint the picture with my words, but if anything's unclear, just let me know. Feel free to interrupt. All right, let's get started. A quick campus over. Oh, this is obviously we're talking about traffic, which is not as warm of a topic as what we just heard, so it's a tough act to follow. All right, a quick campus overview. So it's sort of a figure-8 pattern. There are 2 entry points into the campus. None of this is going to be new information, but it's worthwhile for this discussion to go through this. 2 entry points. The first entry point is to the north, and that's off of Legion Hall. The second entry point is off of Cedar Hills Drive. It's a figure-8 pattern. The circulation is counterclockwise. It's a little difficult to see on the smaller screen, but we've color-coded the circulation patterns. So the yellow line, buses come in for both entrances, and the yellow line takes them counterclockwise around the outer circulating roadway. The pink line represents the high school traffic. So the high school traffic comes in, turns right at what will be a critical corner for future discussion here. They turn right and they can either go into the parking lot to park or to drop off, or they drop off directly in front of the high school. The middle school traffic is the blue line. That comes in, also goes in front of the high school, then proceeds around into the middle school parking lot. They do not drop off directly in front of the middle school. They're in the parking lot itself. Directly, the space in front of the middle school is reserved for buses only. The middle school drop-off occurs in the parking lot, and they proceed to the outer circulating roadway, and then they can exit through one of the two entrances. Quick summary of numbers. I know people don't latch on to numbers much, but total enrollment in 2021 for Dunlap High School was about 1,300. For the middle school was about 500. This has been an interesting year with the virtual enrollment. It's also an interesting year to do a traffic study with the virtual enrollment. We expect, based on the Decision Insight Annual Enrollment Projection Report, which did a 10-year projection for both schools, the Dunlap High School is expected to increase 16% over the next 10 years in total, and middle school 20% increase. So those are sort of some design numbers for us as we move forward. I got a few photos to show you. I'm more than certain that most of you experience this on a daily basis, so none of this is new information to you, but still, we took some nice photos, and here's a picture of Cedar Hills Drive, kind of at the worst possible time in the morning. You can see the queue, which is stacked vehicles. I'll use that word a lot. That's just the stacking of vehicles. The queue extends from the entryway onto the campus all the way back to about the Rock Island Trail. That's about 1,000 feet of queue. Here you can see the queue next to the high school as it all kind of turns in. It's all in one lane. This is right in front of the high school. You can see a few things going on here. In addition to the vehicles queuing up and letting out their students to go to school, we have students crossing. There's also an adjacent lane that vehicles will be trying to get through all of that, sort of, for lack of a better word, madness of the pedestrians crossing safely. And there are speed bumps there as well to encourage slow speeds. We went up onto the stadium and took a couple pictures. This is the afternoon pickup. As the vehicles wait, you can see them queued up in front of the high school. You can also see them queued up in the parking lot itself. It's kind of a queue spillover area, which is actually fairly effective. And another perspective of the middle school parking lot. So there are actually 16 cars queued up in the parking lot waiting to pick up students, and then the queue wraps around the corner. You can see 3 more waiting around there. The outer circulating roadway is reserved for the bus stacking. We've asked ourselves why they're stacking like that, and we don't actually know the reason. But there's a lot of bus drivers there who are doing it, so I'm sure they've agreed to something. I just can't think of what it is exactly.
They do that so that other cars can't come between them when they're parked.
Yeah, so it's prevention of other through traffic, which makes sense. Okay. Thank you. Okay, and then afternoon exiting, the cars do queue up along the outer circulating roadway, but that queue is pretty different because that's on campus. It's not out in the open on a public roadway. I would consider it less dangerous because you don't have through traffic that's trying to get through. The public roadway is not blocked. So queuing on campus is generally better. Obviously, nobody likes to wait in a line, but it's still, it's going to be a little bit necessary. This is not a magical thing that you're going to have a queue at some point. The question is, how can we manage that traffic better and reduce that to make it safer and more effective for everyone? Okay, let's talk about a few critical operational observations. The dotted line represents the queue that's being built up and where it's primarily being generated from. So it's all mostly coming from in front of the high school. It extends out of the campus onto the public roadways, roughly 800 feet on Legion Hall Road, and even around the corner. We have video evidence of it queuing around the corner onto Illinois Route 91. Additionally, to the southeast on Cedar Hills, it's about 1,000 feet. And that's kind of at the worst couple of minutes in the morning. So another observation here is looking at the circulation. If you look at where everyone's going, with the exception of buses, every passenger vehicle entering the site during morning pickup and drop-off is going through that red area. And that's only one lane. So you have all of the traffic coming in with students, all the vehicular traffic going right through that one point on one lane. So that's a problem that we're going to try to offer some suggestions to fix. In front of the high school, directly in front of the high school, we have a few things to note. So that purple one in the upper right, that's indicating that there's really just one lane, one designated lane to enter. Everyone does that turn. There are 3 separate crosswalks to get you from the high school parking lot to the high school itself. There are 2 speed bumps, which is really for pedestrian safety, right in front of 2 of the crosswalks. And I'm not saying all these are problems, I'm just pointing out the obvious. And then one thing we noticed is that we have an island, a grassy island, and 9 out of 10, that's just an estimate from watching some video and being out there and watching the operation, 9 out of 10 drivers with students getting out on that curb and going directly to the school, they pull right up to that middle central crosswalk and they let out their student right there. Even though they could have gotten out minutes maybe before, well maybe not minutes, but critical seconds before and walked an extra 50 feet. So we have sidewalk to the left, we have sidewalk to the right that goes wraps all the way around. So we're really there's only like 2 spaces right in front of that central crosswalk where people are getting out. But really what we want to do is have a wide area where everyone knows that this is the designated space to get out, and I should not be trying to minimize the distance that my child is walking to the front door, because there's a huge queue, so many other people that are paying for that along the way. All right, regarding the middle school drop-off area challenges, they're dropping off in the parking lot, which the parking lot was designed kind of to be a parking lot, not necessarily a drop-off area. The 3 lanes that go in front of the middle school, those are reserved for buses during pickup and drop-off, and we're all for separating modes, but there is something occurring here where you have 3 lanes where really the buses need 1 to 2. There's sort of a mismatch going on of where the vehicles are. So there were some other goals that were communicated to us. Well, in addition to all this, we of course want to encourage multimodal transportation, so that means more busing and more bicycling, if any. I don't know if there is any biking right now, and walking to school. So every student that can do that, that's 1 less car in that feed, which is a lot less delay overall. We are also looking into new access to the north staff parking lot. We'll show you an exhibit on that in a minute. And the request for additional parking came up in a discussion with Scott that we met with Scott a few weeks ago. So we asked about parking. He said, yeah, you can always use a little more parking. So we have an idea for that as well. So we'll talk about potential improvements, but every improvement that I suggest is going to do 1 of 4 things or a combination of those. So the first thing that we can do is spread the traffic out over a longer time frame, right? So everyone's arriving at the exact same time. We have 2 schools that have the exact same start time. It's just too much in that actual time frame. What else can we do? We can spread out traffic in space. So we can spread it out in time, but we can also move traffic around in space with some other tools that we'll talk about. What else can we do? We can reduce the number of vehicles arriving. So that's the multimodal discussion. Get more on a bus, get some kids on some bicycles, and get some kids walking. And finally, we can manage the traffic more efficiently. So every solution is going to be a little bit of that. So we have the traffic there, but what else can we do with lanes? What can we do with lane designation? What can we do with student crosswalks to make it all just operate a little more smoothly? All right, let's talk about concept number 1. I like to think this is an easy one, but I recognize there are some challenges with this. So the first thing would be, let's spread it out over time. You have two distinct schools, middle school and a high school. Let's offset the high school and middle school start and end times. And we're not asking for a lot, but we think the 20 minutes, at least we would recommend at least 20-minute offset for the start times. It would really do a lot to reduce that queue. We estimate a quick, like an almost immediate queue reduction by 720 feet off of the public roadways. So that would help a lot. Of course, this comes with some challenges, and it's a little bit beyond the scope of our study to solve those. We would need, it's much more of a logistical problem, but just to bring those up, so we have bus routes that would need to be reconfigured, because we know that you have 2 middle schools and high school that any one of those students may be on a given bus route. The staffing hours would need to be adjusted at 1 or both schools, depending on how you play the start times. And it could be really inconvenient for families who have children at both schools, because now you want to go pick up your kid, but you got to wait 20 more minutes at the other school. So that's concept number 1.
Question.
Yes.
You said that would reduce queuing on the road by 750 feet, correct? Is
720-ish, yeah. I
Is
mean,
that on both roads or in
that would be
total?
grand total.
Grand total.
We think that by stripping the middle school traffic away, which is really what that's doing, is it's isolating the middle school traffic from the high school traffic.
Yeah.
We estimate the middle school has a much less students than the high school does. So it's going to be very effective, but that's also not we don't think that's going to be 100% of the solution, is what we're saying.
Thank you.
It's in 2021, and actually 2031, that number would go up. But of course, the queue would go up too.
Right. Everything will grow proportionally. All right. Concept number 2, we'll show you this drawing. I have some zoom-ins of the drawing in a moment. So this is a little bit complicated. I'm going to do my best to explain it. That area that was red in the previous area where everyone is going through one lane on entry, that's actually 3 lanes wide, but 2 of those lanes are to exit the campus. Now, the biggest problem that we're experiencing out there are the excessive queues in the morning drop-off. The afternoon, yes, there are some tough problems with that, but really it's kind of working now on campus. It's not spilling out on the public road. So if we're focusing on fixing the morning drop-off spill onto the public road, the idea becomes that center lane in what was that red zone, if we cone it off to allow that to be 2 lanes of entry in the morning. So that means the staff member goes out there, places cones, then all of a sudden you have a reversible lane concept working where 2 lanes are coming in, and you can see I have them color-coded. One is yellow and one is green. And we can then do some lane designation because what we have is 3 categories of cars coming in through that one spot. The first category is drivers who want to drop off their student in front of the high school. That would be the yellow lane. The second category would be high school drivers, both students and parents who want to park in the parking lot. So that would be in the green. And you can see that the green, they could come in down farther south. And that green arrow that's on the right side of the screen, that's where they could come in. And that would no longer be an exit in the morning. It's just a temporary setup in the morning. But they could basically bypass the queued up vehicles doing the drop-off and go right into the parking lot. The third category are the middle school students, and they just need to get through all this to get to their own world, right? So that would be the green that continues around and in front. So they would also have their own lane. So 3 categories. The green is kind of intended to be this continuously flowing thing. The yellow, we recognize, needs to have some stops in there to drop out their students. In addition to this, this is a blow-up we should have done before. But you can see those little orange dots are representative of where you'd start with the cones. And so when you're training everyone, and you try this out, you're going to need a lot of cones at first. But once everybody gets used to it and everyone says, I know exactly what to do, what lane to be in, where I want to be, you can probably reduce the cones by half and everyone will understand. You can advance one, I think. Okay, so now in front, in addition to doing this, one of the biggest problems that we saw out there is that you have students parking or being dropped off in the parking lot. And when they cross that primary throughway right there, they just go, right? They don't wait for anybody because vehicles should yield to pedestrians, right? And there are 3 crosswalks, so it's kind of it ends up being a little bit chaotic. So what we would propose is that the outer 2 crosswalks would be temporarily coned off or closed during the morning. And then, so all those pedestrians would be channeled to the middle crosswalk, and you would have a crossing guard. And the crossing guard's job would be to bunch up those pedestrians into a group, and about every 30 seconds, that whole platoon crosses as a group, so that you don't have, because any given pedestrian right now can stop the whole queue of cars for, and that's a 10-second delay for everybody. So we think that would be a huge improvement in just cleaning that up. Now, in addition to that, the pink areas, we would be encouraging. So I have a dream, right? I have this dream of this military style, 10 to 15 cars pull up, and they drop off their student along the pink dotted line areas, and all the doors open simultaneously. And the student exits onto the sidewalk, and then they all walk, right? And the doors close, and then those 10 all proceed out. And then the next 10 come. Now, I realize that's an unrealistic dream, but it's worth fighting for and going for. It's worth trying to do that. Now, to do that, there would have to be communication to the drivers. There would have to be some sort of an exhibit saying, here's what we're going to try, that we would have to get some staff members, anywhere between 3 and 5 staff members with cones, like airport-style traffic controllers out there. And maybe maybe to begin, you have a staff member who's responsible for 2 of those designated spaces. They wave 2 in, they let 2 out, and then off they go. And if this is and then if you can combine the drop-off with when the students exit the vehicles, then the platoon of pedestrians crosses the street, right? So it's all beautiful in my head. But that's something worth fighting for. Let's take a look at the next blow-up image. So the other thing here that we're combining this with, the green will proceed around the corner into the middle school parking lot. So they can still do their drop-off. That's not, there's just not so many cars that's not working for middle school. What the way the middle school is suffering is they're adding to that queue with the high school, and they have to go through the high school world before they can get there. But if we clean up how quickly they can get there, they can still do that drop-off there because they're pretty quick to move out. What we've changed here is the yellow. So the yellow represents those drivers who dropped off their kid at the high school. But to expand that drop-off zone, the thing you would want to do is designate that outer lane. So of those 3, which are currently reserved for buses only, we would designate just the outer lane as an acceptable exit lane to exit the campus. With that, we've created more conflicts, though, at the crosswalk that's shown at the bottom of the screen there. That's the main crosswalk where all those middle school pedestrians are crossing. So what we want to do is probably start, at the very least, we would begin with a crossing guard there to clean that up and to manage those conflicts. All right, so that's concept 2, the reversible lane and controlled student crossings, particularly in the AM drop-off. It has potential to remove, roughly 370 cars from the drop-off zone. There's so many variables in we've tried for many days to actually calculate the true reduction, but it has so much to do with driver behavior. It's very difficult to estimate the exact number. We do think it will really be a real benefit. The challenges here are to add crossing guards, and you'd have to set up cones before the peak period. All right, concept 3. So this would be, those previous 2 concepts are relatively low cost, right? You could do those next year fairly easily, just with a lot more meetings, I would think. Now this one is to install a new south entrance to the campus. It's an entirely new entrance off of Illinois Route 91. What that would be doing is spreading out the traffic, right? They're all coming in 2 areas, now we have 3 areas where all traffic can come in. The challenges here are obviously that it's going to be costly. I'll get to those in a minute, the cost in a minute. The primary entrance, I think there might be a zoom in slide. Thank you. The primary entrance right off of 91 would be 3 lanes. The 2 lanes in. The inside lane takes you to the middle school back parking lot. The outside lane takes you into a right turn lane, which then takes you around and into the circulating roadway, which is also at that stop sign to the right there on the screen. We would be recommending a reconstruction of that southernmost entrance to the high school parking lot, so just kind of clean up that whole access point. That would be a 2-way entrance and exit. So now we have a situation where the middle school drop-off can be accommodated and designated from Illinois Route 91. And then we also have, actually go to the next slide. Okay, so I have a circulation pattern here. The buses do what the buses do. The pink represents a way that the high school traffic, in particular, we think this would be attractive to student drivers who are parking in the parking lot. So the student drivers could enter from Illinois Route 91, go around the new entrance, and then get into this parking lot, right? And if we can strip all those out of here, all that traffic out of that queue, it'd be great. The middle school is the blue, and you can see there's a designated circulation pattern for drop-off in this back parking lot. The orange area represents a new pickup and drop-off area. And there's a couple options. We just showed both options of how that traffic could exit. All All right, in terms of cost, it's not cheap, but we have the blue area, which is, you can do it in stages, is what we're thinking. So you can do that first stage, which would connect to the middle school, and that could be, open up that opportunity to do a new way to do drop-off. And that'd be roughly $410,000 to build that. That's just construction cost of the roadway. The pink would be another $790,000 to go around the middle school. And the green, if you want to complete the trifecta here, would be another $150,000.
So I have a question.
Yes.
So if you just did the blue and made that for middle school only, have you looked at what that would do to alleviate?
So, yeah, in terms of analysis, well, I guess it makes sense. If you think about the starting, your different start times, it would be almost identical to, this is the physical construction version of the offset start times, right? Because we're stripping out the middle school. So it's not, it actually, just the blue would not solve the problem, I would say. It would help a lot, but so would offsetting the start times.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. All right, some quick other concepts. Those are the three big ones. We're almost done here. So encourage multimodal transportation. This little diagram, every yellow line here is representing where the sidewalks are on the campus. So we want to encourage bus usage. Perhaps we could, at some point, you probably already are at a maximum capacity for your parking, and that's something that you can manage with student passes and so on. I mean, obviously, it's not ideal that that some students won't get the opportunity to park, but you know, you got to do what you got to do at some point, right? With the facility that you have. Can you hit next, please? All right, so one thing I want to note, to encourage biking. So if you look at Illinois Route 91, to the north there, they just put in all those nice bike lanes. They gave nice new bike lanes along Legion Hall Road in the past 2 or 3 years, I think, up to the school. But then once you get onto campus, there's only one way for a pedestrian or a bicyclist sidewalk to get on campus, and that's from the Legion Hall Road entrance. So that yellow line there represents basically what is, I think, like a 4-foot wide sidewalk. It's really minimal. So we would suggest that you widen that sidewalk into something that's comfortable for bikes and peds to use simultaneously. But then even when you get there, down to that corner where you turn in to go to the staff parking lot or the buses turn, well, there's a staircase right there. So it's really not exactly a bike-friendly situation. So we would recommend you remove the stairs. You could regrade that with a small retaining wall to make it all smooth. You want a rollable, something for wheelchairs, something for bicycles. And any improvement you make to the sidewalk for bikes is going to feel great for the pedestrians, the walkers as well. Another concept that I mentioned we talked about would be constructing new access to the staff parking lot on the north. That staff parking lot gets, once the buses are all queued up there, that gets kind of shut down. Which I am not really in a position to say whether the staff is annoyed with that or if that's a real problem. I realize it's happening off at different times. And I think a lot of the staff actually go reverse flow to get out, which again may not really be a problem. But this is something that you could do to clean that up, just to clean up the site a little bit.
I think previously we talked about adding more parking there by that staff parking lot.
Additional parking to the north?
Was that with you, Mike?
Yeah.
We talked about that, where between the green and then the road entrance, maybe have another parking area in that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's no reason you couldn't do that.
And I know this, maybe staff would park in one and then maybe have just the new sophomore drivers or whatever in that lot, but we did discuss that at the time.
Yeah, there's no reason that wouldn't work.
2 questions, because that seems like it would have a big impact for not that huge of a cost, okay? Will the city of Dunlap permit another entrance/exit off of our campus on the Legion Hall Road?
It's a county jurisdiction roadway.
Will the county allow?
That'd be up to the county, yeah. I don't see a reason why.
We don't see a
wouldn't.
reason they wouldn't.
Okay. Second, I would think that we could put, we talked a minute, putting striping at the exit that says, no, do not block. You could stripe off an area where buses can't park so that the teachers
Oh, sure.
coming the other direction.
To allow them on. We weren't actually certain that was a problem, but
Yeah.
I can see how it might be a problem. And if
Right,
it is,
okay.
then yeah, that would work as well.
Thank you.
And the last one is added parking capacity. There's one area just to the west of the high school parking lot where you could add 34 stalls. To do it, you'd have to remove 4, so that's a net gain of 30 additional parking. But then, as you mentioned, you could add parking to the north staff lot as well. That's just sort of out of the way. It depends who you want parking and where.
Well, our thought was less people would be driving in the danger
Yes,
zone if
right,
they would
yeah,
just
yeah.
park in front.
Sure, if that's if it's acceptable to put the students and parents that far away.
We were just concerned about how to get across and coming in through the back of the
Sure.
building.
Yeah, we would also like to. It's worth mentioning that adding parking is also encouraging more driving.
Yeah.
Increase the problem.
All right. Okay. So final recommendations. So short term, stagger the high school and middle school start times, and implement the reversible lane concept with the crossing guard at the high school entrance. In the long term, consider construction of the new south entrance, and that can be done in stages, beginning with the entrance access to the middle school back lot.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah,
Anyone
thank
have
you very
any
much for your attention.
questions? Anybody have any questions or comments this time?
I'll just make a quick comment. To Mike's first question about the county and the road entrance, we researched that the last time we talked about this. The county said it would not be an issue for us to put an entrance there. So I think that's a go. Secondly, James Barrett, our transportation director, has put together a sample plan of what a staggered start time would look like. Of course, that's on paper, and then I need to know what's that going to look like in application. So Jason, Antonio, Dr. Adrian, myself will meet next week. We got a meeting already scheduled to go through his plan and see what does that really look like when we try and apply that to an actual school setting. So that is already in progress.
Okay. Can I ask one more question? Your concept too, you talked about a staff member going out every day and putting out all these cones, rain, snow, sleet, wind. Is there some reason that those standards that are flexible, that won't damage a car if it hits it? You've seen them, I've seen them, we've installed them ourselves. Could those be put in permanently, or is there a reason you don't want that in permanently?
Yeah, they could, but I mean, you do have a lot of queue going on in the afternoon. So like most of those exit lanes are being used.
Yeah, okay.
And I think you generate a certain amount of frustration in the afternoon at the benefit to the morning.
Yeah, okay.
And honestly, the cones option, while difficult to begin with and perhaps labor intensive, it might just be something you want to try, and the impermanence of it might be an advantage in the long run. So, see what's working, what's not. And then we also think that the number of cones and the effort there, you already have the flagger, the security guard gentleman, I believe, who is working at that corner. If he came out 15 minutes earlier and just set up the cones, and by week 2, week 3, he probably only has, maybe 10 or 15 cones that he has to put up.
Yeah, okay.
So.
Thank you.
This is something you'll probably deal with, is like the cost of changing the start time, because right now the buses are going from the valley to the high school, so you'd have to adjust that too, right?
Yeah. Like I said, he's got a plan in place. I want to talk to the principals and see what that looks like in the day-to-day operations of their buildings to make sure it's feasible. I've got some questions with it, but I need to get that affirmed through the people that work directly in the buildings. We'll get that done next week.
Okay, well, if there are no further questions, I'd like to thank you very much for your time, and I'm sure our administrative team will get back to you.
Thank you for the attention and the opportunity.
Thank you so much. Information regarding the renewals of transportation contracts for Northminster Learning Center and Fun and Fit are included in the board packet. Are there any questions? The Board of Education has received information regarding planning for the 21-22 school year. Do you have any
Yeah, I was going to
presentation?
make a comment.
Okay.
I'll let them finish their conversation.
Dr. Adrian.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Basically, everybody, as administrators in this district, we get asked pretty much daily, what's the start of school going to look like next year? Because everybody wants to know. And trust me, I want to know too. There was guidance given today, again, by ISB about the return to school that just came out. So that makes 4 times in the last 5 days, guidance has changed either through CDC, ISB, or other entities, IDPH. There's 4 main factors. First factor is traditional versus block schedule. We need to make a decision on that. Second is mask or no mask. Third is quarantine or no quarantine. And then fourth is the remote option. Are we going to offer that to anybody that wants it or just the medically fragile? 3 of those 4, I think, are going to be decided for us, and I've already shown movement in that direction. I want to work smarter, not harder as a group. I think it would be a waste of time for the board or myself or my admin team to dive into this and start making hard decisions when some of this is going to be decided and passed down from above. The one thing I think we can control that is truly local is the traditional or the block schedule. And we need to make that decision because my admin team needs time to put their schedules together, and we don't want to get in a situation where things change at the last minute, and we know the stress and the chaos that can cause. So I met with my admin team, with the full admin team, had a robust conversation about what the directive was that they wanted me to carry forward as a recommendation as far as the scheduling for next year. It was unanimous. Now, this primarily hits the middle and the high schools more so than the elementaries, obviously. Mr. Holmes, Mr. Johnson, Dr. Adrian, unanimous. Traditional schedule is what's best for kids. So that is the recommendation of the admin team at this point. So that's the only thing I need from the board at this point as far as direction. The rest, I'm going to have Ms. Bagby reconvene that return to school committee. They did second semester. I think we all agreed. Went really well. And then we'll come to you in the June meeting. Hopefully some of these things are decided with a full recommendation of this is what we want to do come August. That will come at the June meeting.
All right then, so for block versus traditional, I feel that that's a professional decision that the administrative team knows better than we do. Does anyone have any questions or concerns about going back to traditional schedule?
No, my only point is, assuming that we do that, which if that's what the administration supports, that I support it, so long as the kids get the use of their lockers again.
Is that what they're hoping to do?
That is the plan for now.
Okay.
Does anyone else have any objections to going back to traditional? I think that's what they're recommending. I think you have our...
I see what you're saying, Mr. We want kids carrying 8 periods worth of books on their back. So I think, that would be something we have to certainly consider.
All right.
But that will all be built into the June presentation of our return to school.
Very good. All right then. Any other comments about mask versus mask quarantines or remote? I do think we need to have a little time to see what's going to be mandated. But if anyone else has any comments that they want to say at this time, or
Do you think it'll be settled by June with these guidance that we don't have yet from above?
No.
If I've learned anything with the state of Illinois, nothing will be settled, ever. But I think we'll have a clear direction of where we think it's going, and we'll have enough to make an informed decision as a district to implement whatever plan we decide at that time.
Any other comments? You'd like to take your mask off now, wouldn't you?
I'm ready for them to go.
I think
And the
we
whole country's going that way, so I don't know why the schools would hold off.
I think it'll be nice if we can make it optional, and I agree with you that we're all set with these masks. We're ready to take them off. All right then. Well, if we have no other comments, we're going to go ahead and move forward. Information regarding the renewal of Right at School contract for the 21-22 school year are included in the board packet. Are there any questions? Information regarding the destruction of closed session audio recordings are included in the board packet. Are there any questions? Information regarding perfect intergovernmental agreement are included in the board packet. Are there any questions? Information regarding the 21-22 facility rental renewal agreement is included in the board packet. Are there any questions?
I'll just make a comment. That needs to be renewed. We put a lot of money into the pool, and at that time that was done, and the members that were on the pool committee are in agreement with this. They understood that at some point they have to help contribute towards the cost of the pool and the maintenance and the upkeep of that. We have a staff member, Troy, probably, Dr. Adrian, you say 3/4 of his day is probably spent working on that pool? let alone the chemicals and the other costs associated with that pool and keeping it running. I've had Mrs. Caslett put together fees of what that would look like if they were to do a traditional rental. It's a little higher than I think was reasonable. I mean, they are an integral part of our school and our community. We want to work with them. So I will meet with the Dolphins and have a conversation with them and bring this back to you with a number for the June meeting. The Curly Boo basketball camp has been using our facilities for a number of years at no charge. That is actually against the policy because it states that for-profit entities, should be paying a fee. Again, Mrs. Caslett, thank you to you for running the numbers for me. Came up with the cost, and the cost to rent the gym by hour and the number of gyms that he uses is about $20,000. And running the numbers of what he charges for that camp and the number of kids, I do not think that's an unreasonable number. But again, I will bring that to you in June as a final recommendation for approval.
Thank you, Dr. Dearman. Are there any further questions? This concludes the information discussion item segment of the meeting. The board will now move on to the consent agenda. Are there any questions or discussion regarding items on the consent agenda? May I please have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Thank you, Mrs. Holzhauser. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Henry. Any discussion? Roll call vote.
Henry.
Aye.
Feldman.
Aye.
Hausengay.
Aye.
Holzhauser.
Aye.
Humbles.
Aye.
Wagenbach.
Aye.
Wisdom.
Aye.
Motion carried. The board will now move on to the action items. Information regarding the consolidated district plan is included in the board packet. Do we have any questions? May I please have a motion to approve the consolidated district plan?
I move to approve the consolidated district plan as presented.
Thank you, Mrs. Henry. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Wisdom. Any discussion? Roll call vote.
Humbles.
Aye.
Wagenbach.
Aye.
Wisdom.
Aye.
Henry.
Aye.
Feldman. Hausengay. Holzhauser.
Motion carried. The bill list, treasurer's report, and district investment report are included in the board packet. Are there any questions? May I please have a motion for payment of the bills?
I move to approve payment of the bills in the amount of $3,603,706.96 as presented.
Thank you, Mr. Feldman. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Holzhauser. Any discussion? Roll call vote.
Wagenbach.
Aye.
Wisdom.
Aye.
Henry.
Aye.
Feldman.
Aye.
Hausengay. Holzhauser.
Aye.
Humbles.
Aye. Motion carried. Approval of resolutions, property tax appeal. Information regarding the resolution to intervene in the property tax appeal is included in the board packet. Are there any questions? May I please have a motion to approve the resolution?
I'll move to approve resolution number 17 through 24 to authorize intervention in property tax appeal board assessment as presented.
Thank you, Mr. Wigginwall. May I please have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Feldman. Any discussion? Roll call vote.
Wisdom.
Aye.
Henry.
Aye.
Feldman.
Aye.
Hausengay. Holzhauser.
Aye.
Humbles.
Aye.
Wagenbach.
Aye.
Motion carried. Dr. Dillman will discuss the resolution of hearing for health life safety funds. Dr. Dearman.
But this actually should have probably been up in information because I don't need an action on this tonight.
Okay.
It's just more of a sample of what you're going to see next month. There's very strict requirements in order to access health life safety funds for summer projects. So I'll have to put a notice in the paper of general circulation at least a week before the meeting next month. We'll run that, and then we'll have this health life safety resolution and hearing at the June meeting. So that's just a sample of what it is, but it's red tape that we have to cut through in order to access those funds. And I recommend we use health life safety funds because they qualify and they're not part of our operating funds.
Thank you, Dr. Dearman. Any questions?
Is there any necessity that we wait till June for this? If it is just red tape, is there any reason we can't go ahead and approve it tonight?
You have to have that notice in the paper of general circulation at least a week before the meeting. But again, we won't start, this is for the next fiscal year, so we won't need access to the funds until July anyway. And Farnsworth is actually still working on Caius and Doug on determining which of the summer projects qualify and the dollar amounts associated with those in the bid packages.
All right, then we'll move on. Information regarding the purchase of the school activity bus is included in the board packet. Are there any questions? May I please have a motion for the purchase of the school activities bus?
I will move to approve the purchase of the school activity bus as presented.
Thank you, Mr. Wisdom. Is there a second? Thank you, Mr. Wagenbaugh. Any discussion? Roll call vote.
Henry. Aye. Feldman.
Aye.
Hausengate. Bolshauser. Humbles.
Aye.
Wagenbach.
Aye.
Wisdom.
Motion carried. At the April 28th board meeting, there was a request by Mr. Tom Feldman to revisit the 21-22 staffing. Mr. Feldman?
Yeah, thank you, Abby. I'm going to use the microphone if I
Sure.
can so people can hear me. Okay, thank you, Abby. I want to provide some background, and then I plan to make a motion to reconsider the elementary staffing decision from the April 21st meeting. If I get my motion seconded, we can have a discussion before voting. If I don't get my motion seconded, I guess I'll be done with it. I'll say at the top that while I did receive some additional information during the special meeting on April 28th regarding digital citizenship, social media awareness, keyboarding, and learning computer coding, it had no bearing on my interest in speaking this evening. I made my decision to speak to this on April 21st. Further, I have not had any personal conversation with any teachers on this topic. The only people I've reached out to were the elementary school principals, Megan and Matt, who put the staffing presentation together, and Dr. Dearman. I also reached out to each of the board members to make known my intent to revisit this, although I did not solicit their support or their vote on my upcoming motion. I want to speak on this because I don't believe that there was a clear understanding about the staffing options presented. I'm not speaking because I can't live with the vote that was taken. In my short time on the board, I've been in the minority on 3 other votes and have not asked to revisit those items. So I'm comfortable with supporting a majority decision, but I believe that the situation is completely different. On April 21st, the board voted for option 1, but added what Karen termed a caveat to use technology teachers in the regular classrooms. This change essentially eliminated technology as an offering. Put otherwise, the board cut the technology program at the elementary schools for this coming year. I want to go back to the fall of this year. At that time, October-ish, we were reviewing various scenarios for cuts based on the finances as we understood them. I was supportive of these efforts, as I viewed them to be prudent course of action. I was then and still am willing to make cuts when they are necessary and appropriate. The mood was pretty amped up, and there was a fair amount of confusion or misinformation as to what the board was doing or planning to do. As a result, there were many people lined up to speak at the November board meeting, at least virtually. At the beginning of that meeting, Mike did a nice job speaking to what he referred to as the current tenor of the board. He said that while we didn't want to be in this position, he noted that it didn't make sense to take money from reserves for a consecutive year without doing something about it. I think it's fair to mention that the board did pledge in the fall on several different occasions to in fact use some of the reserves combined with any potential cuts to offset any deficit, which never became necessary. Mike went on to say that he would not support making cuts to, quote, teachers, programs, or staff until we had a better sense of the finances, end quote. Abby followed up Mike's comments to say that she would not take action until, quote, we had a clear picture, end quote. Mike and Abby were convincing enough that not a single word about the cuts to programs or staff was mentioned at the December meeting. In fact, there was zero conversation about the district finances altogether, which was a little surprising to me. At the January meeting, cuts were put on the published agenda just the same. This line item was later removed prior to the meeting because there wasn't any basis or enough support to leave it on. In February, cuts were once again placed, and at this time left on the agenda. Towards the top of that meeting, Karen made a motion to have it removed as an action item, but wanted to have a discussion on the topic later in the meeting. I voted no to that because in the face of the well-improved financial state, I wanted to bring some finality to this topic of cuts, at least for this school year. In justifying why Karen wanted to keep the cuts on as a discussion item, she said that, quote, she wanted to have an open discussion versus one from behind the scenes, end quote, ostensibly only including board members. Teresa stated that she was also in favor of having no cuts at this time and made the suggestion that the board adopt a policy to better govern or guide when we may have to implement cuts in the future based on fiscal performance. Teresa added that, quote, while we have a surplus, we should keep all of the programs that we have, end quote. Abby concluded the discussion by saying she felt it was, quote, appropriate to take the cuts off as an action item because it was disingenuous to keep it on without having a deficit. She further, end quote. She further emphasized that it would be, quote, very disingenuous to be addressing, quote, cuts without a projected deficit, end quote. Obviously didn't rehearse this enough. At the end of the March meeting, we had a presentation from Matt Andrews and Megan Bagby to review 3 options. And I've asked Megan to throw one of the slides up for review, but I think you have all 4 of the slides from that presentation available, Megan, right? For staffing at the elementary schools. During this presentation, there was no discussion about making cuts to programs. As you can see, cuts to the programs are not Cuts to any programs are not referenced as a con or a challenge in any of the options that were presented. I had some questions later regarding online enrollment figures, and even Abby and Karen and myself all had questions for Dr. Dearman seeking clarification on the bus route expenses. There was no mention of technology being cut for the coming school year. So at April's regular meeting of the board, a motion was made to approve the elementary staffing plan. This motion was made and seconded immediately. As the roll was about to be called, Dr. Dearman had to interject to remind the board that there were 3 options to consider. This is when Karen amended her motion and added the caveat regarding cutting technology to modify option 1, which I would call option 4, because it clearly is not representative of the other 3 previously reviewed options. The roll was called, but paused briefly because Ann had to clarify which option was being voted on. That's how fast this was moving. The motion was passed unanimously within 90 seconds, which included the time for Dr. Dearman's clarification, Karen's modification, and Ann's question. There was no acknowledgement of the fact that this vote effectively cut technology as an offering at the elementary schools for the coming year. None of the 5 elementary school principals were aware that this cut was a potential and was on the table for consideration. I don't believe that the decision made to approve a previously not discussed or presented option with its changes was appropriate, given the board's past public comments to the community, along with the fact that we did not have to pull additional monies from reserves as once anticipated. Nor do I think the decision was necessary given our current financial standing. With all of that said, I'd like to make a motion to set aside the decision regarding elementary school staffing and in it from last month's regular meeting, and in its place select option 3 that was presented and discussed and initially recommended by administration. Thank you for your time and consideration, and I'll need someone to second my motion.
Dr. Humboldt, I'm going to raise a point of order. Our policy 2-220 specifies that we're to follow Robert's Rules of Order. And Robert's Rules of Order says that for a motion to reconsider, it can only be made by one who voted on the prevailing side of an issue. And so, according to our rules, that motion would have to be made by somebody who was on the prevailing side of that issue,
That is correct.
if we're following our policies.
Then I can amend my motion, Mike, and thanks for pointing that out, but I can amend my motion to ask the board to consider adopting option 3 of the elementary staffing options for next school year.
Still think that's a motion to reconsider an action that's already been taken, Tom.
Well, it's actually a motion to take an action that wasn't considered. And if you want to get particular about it, again, the option that was adopted was not presented as a discussion item in the previous meeting. Option 1 with modifications was not an option that was discussed at the March meeting, nor was it presented. It was presented in haste at the 11th hour at the last meeting, not discussed, not available for public comment, but yet passed, passed within 90 seconds of it being thrown out there. So if anything, I think we probably failed the community and our obligation in not presenting the option and discussing it in the first place. Because that is not an option that is up there. That was passed in April. And admittedly, I was late to the April meeting by 20 minutes, but I had not anticipated that we would have set the land speed record for a board meeting on the one meeting that I was late for, because it got done within 20 minutes.
Well, I'd like to clarify that, speaking with Dr. Dearman, we have discussed that we are not removing the technology program, but we're going to explore other ways to deliver the technology program. And Dr. Dearman and I have discussed that, and I think it's something that we can continue to explore. If we want to have a re-vote, I don't know if you're going to contest the vote. I tend to agree we need to follow Robert's rules, but I think, you want to prove a point, and you'd like to have your voice on the record.
Well, I want to more than prove a point. I think we were wrong in approving an option that was never discussed or contemplated. So
Well,
I think
she made a motion, and the motion was voted on, and that's legal to do that. But if you think that we should have a re-vote of that particular issue, I suppose we can. I don't think it's holding within the Robert's Rules of Orders, but I'm not opposed to going on record and voting. Do we have any suggestions by the Vice President or the Secretary?
I want to follow up before you continue there, Abby. I spoke with Dr. Dearman as late as Monday, and there is no plan currently for addressing the absence of technology for next year.
Dr. Dearman, would you like to explain what you and I discussed?
Yeah. First of all, we will still teach technology, right? And there's a lot of different ways we can do that. Look at what's been done this year, let alone with the pandemic and some of the technologies we've embraced. Dr. Adrian gave a big shout out to Ms. Bagby and Mr. Andrews for the work they've done with PLCs. We could address some of this with PLCs. We could use open source resources. We could look at different package programs. There's a lot of different ways this can be done. It is a requirement, no one can argue that.
2022.
But it's not a requirement to hire tech teachers to do it. Not every school has the luxury of Dunlap to even employ a tech team. Will it be a robust and better technology program with dedicated tech teachers? No one will argue that, absolutely. But there are options. I have a 100% confidence in our teachers. If we do not have the tech teachers as a separate entity, they will be able to get this done. They prove it time and time again.
And this year, was it handled by the teachers?
It was. But it was not consistent, as Ms. Bagby has shared, and the principals will attest to. So there is work to be done there.
Not consistent in that some teachers did and some teachers did not?
Correct.
So if we've already got dedicated tech teachers that specialize in that area hired and on staff, why wouldn't we utilize them to the best of their ability to teach their specialty.
Because via the motion that was made, they are no longer tech teachers, those are classroom teachers now.
Well, I'm just wondering, if we could have more of a discussion around why, or what the decision was that was made, because there was no discussion. So the public can understand why the decision was made that was made.
To keep the technology teachers where they are, would mean that the board would really need to hire 2 more teachers.
Because
Fill
the
those
district is
positions.
growing.
Yeah.
So, to me, if the district is growing, the need for 2 more teachers they come together, right? The district's growing, we need more teachers, let's hire 2 more teachers, keep the technology teachers in their specialty, and keep a world-class school district like we've got.
I think the problem we were facing and continue to face is we still aren't quite sure where we are with the education fund. Now, we know that the total of the sum funds, we're probably not going to be in the huge deficit that we were told. But in the education fund, that is not where a lot of the overflow money is at this particular time. So I think if we hire new teachers, we can hire new teachers in June, July. I've even hired teachers in August and September, so you have a better feel for what you're going to have and who's coming in the fall. But I think the motion was made with the idea of the education fund staying within balance. And so the information that we have now is a little clearer than it was at the beginning of the school year, but I believe that was why Mrs. Disherin made that motion. Do we have any other comments? Do we want to go ahead and put this out for a vote? Do we want to wait until the next meeting? and
What
vote
are the
again?
implications by waiting, I guess, because my question is, and just like you said, Abby, at a whole level, and I talk about the 4 operating funds, right? Correct, we will be at a surplus, but the education fund most likely will be either break even, or I haven't talked to you, Scott, about it, it may not be, right? Next year. of
Maybe
course-
200,000?
Yeah, something like that. But then we have to look at next year as well. And there's going to be, from what I understand, and Damon, you can correct me if I'm wrong, $1 million increase most likely in the cost. I don't know what the property tax, the assessments have done this year. I know I did get mine in the mail. I don't know what overall they were, but there's potentially that we could see a decrease in revenue coming in. Would you agree with that, Damon, or is that accurate?
So what you saw this year, yes, there was a 2.3% decrease in revenue.
What do we anticipate for next year? Do we know that yet?
When I got those projections last year, I asked for 3-year projections, and they said flat or a slight increase.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear
They
you.
said flat or a slight increase for next year.
Slight increase?
Yes.
Okay.
My property tax bill went down as well.
Mine went down as well when I received, that's why I asked that question. So what would the impact be if we wait until we have more information on student enrollment and the like? Because this year we are utilizing those teachers, those tech teachers as teachers in other.
Here's the problem that we run into. I was just talking to Michaela about this. They interviewed for a kindergarten position, and what'd you say, you had
13 for
13, I'd say 12.
applicants,
And go back 10 years, and it was 200 to 300. What we ran into this year when we had our back-to-school plan and we had the remote sections, we should have probably hired 2 teachers then. But with the availability of the remote teachers and the need for remote instruction, they were a good fit. That's why they got repurposed into the classroom in the first place. They covered some gaps. But we were already short to begin with. Thank goodness we had them. If we wait until July or August especially, that's going to be very difficult on the elementary to try and find replacements if we decide to re-employ those tech teachers, to find those 2 classroom teachers, because what we ran into is we posted for teaching positions at that time. We had 0 qualified applicants. Nina Andrews is a tech teacher, and we had to put her back in the classroom under an emergency provision from the ROE, which they approved. They would not approve that at this time because it's not an emergency. We have applicants. So the longer we wait, the thinner the pool gets, and the less likelihood that we're going to find a quality person to take that position.
Aren't we hiring a kindergarten and a first grade teacher this evening that are new?
No, we are not.
Well, they're on the hire list.
Well, those are the tech teachers that are going into different, they were not, their skill set didn't match those grade levels, so we moved them to higher grade levels, and then we're moving those positions. It's just a shuffling of the deck. They're not new positions.
So we don't have new teachers. It said there were 2 new on the list.
They're filling the gaps that Megan presented at the staffing discussion.
Okay,
It's not any additional FTEs.
Thank you.
Again, those are the,
Possible, and so those aren't new positions, they're just, we're filling the openings that are available.
Thank you. Well, we have a motion on the table. I'm not too sure if this follows Robert's rules, but you have a new motion. I guess we're going to go ahead and vote. We'll entertain. You made the second. Would you restate the motion, please?
My motion is to adopt option 3, which was presented in March, and then
March.
was presented in March by Megan and Matt. It was presented and
For
reviewed
information.
with the board for information. And so I want that to be then put into place for the staffing for the coming year for the elementary schools.
Miranda, do you have that?
Yes.
And you made the second? Okay, thank you.
Roll call vote.
Let's have a roll call vote.
Henry?
No.
Feldman?
Aye.
Hausengay? Holzhauser?
No.
Humbles?
No.
Wagenbach?
No.
Wisdom?
No.
Motion did not carry. This concludes the action item portion of the meeting. May I please have a motion to adjourn to closed session?
I move to adjourn to closed session for the following purposes as stated in the open meeting law: the appointment, employment, compensation, and performance of specific employees, student disciplinary cases, collective negotiating matters, discussion of minutes of meetings lawfully closed, security procedures, the purchase or lease of real property, and litigation.
Thank you. May I have a second?
Second?
Thank you, Mr. Wisdom. Any discussion? Roll call vote.
Wagenbach?
Aye.
Wisdom?
Aye.
Henry?
Aye.
Feldman?
Aye.
Hausengay? Holzhauser?
Aye.
Humbles?
Aye. Motion carried, 7:26.
Keeps us on the move, we never know what you did for.